She won't call. She won't text. Not today. Not next week. Maybe not ever. But don't be fooled by the silence, because behind that silence is a storm. A storm with your name written in every gust of thought. She thinks about you more than she'll admit. Not out loud. Never. But in the quiet moments, when the world stops pretending and the noise dies down, that's when you show up. She still feels the echo of your presence, your voice, your laugh, the way you made her feel like she mattered, like she was the only woman in the room. She's deleted your name from her contacts, but not from her mind. She's erased you from her stories, but not from the chapters playing in her head. She pretends you're irrelevant, but her curiosity is relentless. She watches. She reads your posts, your captions. She scrolls slowly. She replays the last things you ever said. And the wildest part, you'll never know. She'll never show it. Because to her, vulnerability is weakness. Admitting she still feels something. That would break the image she's trying so hard to keep intact. But this isn't about her anymore. This is about you. If you've ever found yourself staring at your screen, wondering why someone who once clung to your presence now acts like you never existed, this message is for you, not for pity, but for power. And if you've been walking through this storm alone, questioning your worth, doubting your strength, I know this. You're not alone. Support this channel not just to hear the truth, but to help other men reclaim theirs. Because this isn't just silence you're facing. It's a test, a turning point, and the way you respond to it will define the kind of man you become. Let's begin. She remembers more than you think. Not just the big moments, but the little ones. The late night talks, the way your voice softened when you said her name, the texts you sent without reason, just to let her know she mattered. Those memories aren't fading, they're looping. And when the world goes quiet, when she's alone in the dark with nothing left to distract her, that's when you return. Not as a ghost, but as a feeling, a presence. She remembers how grounded she felt around you, like the world finally slowed down, like she was finally seen, and not just seen, understood. It wasn't about the gifts or the compliments. It was how you noticed things no one else did, the way you remembered her favorite coffee order, the way you asked how she slept, the way your energy told her she was safe, even when she couldn't say a word. That version of herself, the one who felt chosen, the one who felt understood, she misses her. Because without you, that part of her feels gone. She won't admit it. Not to you, not to her friends, not even to herself completely. But it lingers, in the silence, in the late night scrolls through old messages, in the way she pauses on your name, longer than she should. She checks your stories. She notices your activity. She asks mutual friends how you're doing, pretending it's just curiosity. She doesn't want to go back, but she wants to feel again. And you made her feel something real. Still, she won't reach out. She won't break the silence. Not because she's over it, but because she's afraid of what your silence might reveal. Afraid it might tell her what she's tried so hard not to believe. That you've moved on. That you've outgrown the version of yourself who once needed her. And that thought, it stays with her, even if she'll never say it out loud. She won't say it. Not to you, not to her friends, and sometimes not even to herself, because saying it out loud would break the illusion that she's fine, that she's over you, that she's strong enough to walk away without looking back. But here's the truth. Her silence isn't strength. It's armor, and she wears it well. To admit she still feels something, that would mean surrendering control. It would mean opening the door to rejection. And in her world, that's worse than heartbreak. So she does what she knows best. She stays silent. She lets you believe she's moved on, that your absence doesn't bother her, that your name doesn't echo in her head at 2 a.m. But it does. It echoes loud, because silence, for here, isn't peace. It's pressure. A weight she carries every time she sees your name but doesn't click. Every time she hovers over your profile but doesn't message. Every time she types something vulnerable, honest, rough, and then deletes it all before you ever see it. Not because she doesn't want to send it, but because she's terrified of what your silence might say in return. Terrified you won't answer. Terrified that no reply would confirm what she fears most, that you finally let go. So she pretends. She scrolls. She watches. She notices everything, but says nothing. She posts photos that look carefree. She smiles in them like you never mattered. But those photos, they're not joy. They're defense. They're distraction. Because when the world goes quiet, and she's alone in her room, phone glowing in the dark, the truth floods in. That's when she opens your page, scrolls slowly, reads between the lines, looks for clues in your captions, replays conversations in her head, word for word, as if decoding them might rewrite the ending. She remembers everything. The sound of your laugh, the weight of your hand on her lower back, the way you looked at her like she was the only one. And now that she doesn't feel that anymore, she wonders if she'll ever feel it again. She wonders if she made a mistake, if letting you go was the worst kind of pride. But she won't say that, because pride is still the sword she clings to, and silence is still her shield. Sometimes she types full messages, paragraphs that bleed truth, but before they reach you, she backspaces every word. Not because they weren't real, but because you might not respond. And silence, your silence, would feel like a door slamming shut. So she says nothing. She chooses the illusion of strength over the risk of vulnerability. She'd rather be haunted by what-ifs than face a truth she's not ready to hear. Because if you are okay, if you've moved on, if you're better without her, that knowledge would devastate her more than any goodbye. And deep down, she knows she doesn't have the power anymore. She thought staying quiet kept her in control. But now that same silence is devouring her. It's not that she doesn't care. It's that she cares too much and doesn't know how to show it. Without losing the image she's built to protect herself. She's hoping you'll be the one to cave. She's betting on the old version of you, the one who always reached out, who always forgave, who always chased when she ran. But you haven't. And that silence, It speaks louder than anything you could have said. You've shifted. You've pulled back your energy. And she feels it. She checks if you've watched her story. She waits for a notification that never comes. She plays it cool in front of everyone else. But inside, she's unraveling. Because when a woman loses the man who once gave everything, and that man suddenly gives nothing, it forces her to confront a truth she never wanted to see. That, maybe, just maybe, you've become stronger than her silence. She counted on you breaking first. It wasn't a question in her mind. It was a pattern, a cycle, one she thought would always repeat, because that's who you were. Right. The man who reached out first. The man who apologized even when he didn't do wrong. The man who needed her presence to feel seen. But something changed. You didn't reach out. You didn't chase. You didn't fill the silence. And that silence, it started working against her. At first, she brushed it off. She thought, he's just trying to prove a point. But as the days passed and your name stayed missing from her phone, doubt crept in. Because she realized this wasn't a tactic. This wasn't ego. This was evolution. You weren't reacting. You were rising. Every second you stayed quiet. You reclaimed something you didn't even know. You gave away your energy, your self-respect, your identity. She used to draw power from your response. Now she feels powerless in your absence, because silence, when it's real, when it's rooted in growth, is louder than any words. And what once felt like rejection to you now feels like redirection. She thought ignoring you would bring her control. But all it brought was reflection. Not for you, for her. She expected you to fall apart, to send a message just to check in, to crack under the pressure of not knowing how she felt. But instead, you did something far more powerful. You embraced the not knowing. You sat with the discomfort, and you found clarity. Clarity that said, I don't need her validation to confirm my worth. Clarity that whispered, let her go. She's already gone. And that unsettled her. Because women are used to attention. They're used to men proving, performing, pursuing. But you didn't do any of that. You stood still. Not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with quiet strength. That kind of energy. It echoes. Now she's the one replaying things in her head. Now she's the one wondering if she misjudged your depth, your focus, your capacity to let go. She doesn't see the man who once begged. She sees the man who evolved, the man who grew in silence, the man who didn't need closure to move forward. And that kind of man, he's not easily forgotten. You became the unexpected, the one who didn't fold, the one who didn't beg for attention, but commanded respect through absence. She underestimated what you were building while she was pulling away. Your mission, your discipline, your internal world. And that shift, it shook her. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't write a long goodbye. You didn't play her games. You just stopped showing up to lose. And in doing so, you flipped the dynamic. Now she's the one on edge. She's the one unsure, because your silence isn't passive. It's not cold. It's not revenge. It's clarity. It's healing. It's power. And the more you hold the line, the clearer your message becomes. I no longer need you to feel complete. You're not punishing her. You're prioritizing yourself. And the moment you chose to do that, the shift began. And she felt it. Every day you remain silent. You do something she never expected. You let her sit alone in the very emptiness she created. And here's the thing. That silence doesn't soften over time. It hardens. It sharpens. It grows louder in her chest until it becomes unbearable. It's not the kind of silence that pleads for attention. It's the kind that commands it. It doesn't whisper. It echoes. This silence says one thing: I'm done waiting. And when that realization hits her, it doesn't just sting. It cuts deep. Because for the first time, she's not in control of the narrative. She can't predict your next move. She doesn't know if you're gone for good. That unknown, that void where certainty used to live, starts to crack her pride. She begins asking questions she's never had to face. Did he really move on? Is he truly fine without me? Was I ever that important? And that's where the shift begins. The power that once rested in her hands, because she was the one who walked away, who decided when to speak, when to disappear, now starts slipping from her grasp. Why? Because your silence is no longer just absence. It's action. It's proof that you no longer need closure, or her validation, or some sentimental goodbye, to reclaim your peace. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You didn't fall into the old role of the man who needed her eyes to feel seen. Instead, you turned inward. You focused on your mission, your discipline, your purpose. And that kind of inner shift, it doesn't go unnoticed, especially by someone who once had power over you. Now, she's not wondering if you're okay. She's wondering how she lost a man who became stronger without her. A man who took pain and turned it into power, who turned silence into a mirror and made her face what she tried to avoid. That silence becomes your boundary, your weapon, your armor. It speaks for you. It says you've evolved beyond needing her approval. It tells her you've grown out of the version of yourself who begged to be seen, who waited by the phone, who felt incomplete without her. And that scares her, because it means she no longer holds the emotional leash. She's no longer the center of your focus. You are. There's something deeply magnetic about a man who can sit with his emotions and not be ruled by them, who doesn't lash out, who doesn't beg, who simply lets go without bitterness. That's who you're becoming. Every day you don't break that silence. You reinforce a new truth, that your worth was never tied to her attention, that you're rewriting your identity, not around her, but around the man you've always meant to be. And even from a distance, even in her silence, she sees it. She sees your restraint. She feels your presence in your absence. She sees your calm, your grounded strength, your refusal to collapse. And it lingers. It makes her question everything she believed about you and about men. See, men who chase, they hand over their edge. They make themselves replaceable. They dilute their power. But men who stand still in the storm, who say nothing but say everything, through presence, those men become unforgettable. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to knock on her door to be remembered. You don't need to prove anything, because your silence is no longer a void. It's a statement. It's the final word. And what makes it truly powerful is that you never had to say it out loud. On the outside, she seems fine. She smiles in photos. She laughs with her friends. She posts stories like life never skipped a beat. But behind all of that, there's a storm, one that no one else hears. It's not loud to the world. It's loud in her soul. She's not sleeping as well as she pretends. She's not as distracted as she wants to be. Because even when she's surrounded by people, there's a voice inside whispering the one name she refuses to say out loud. Yours. The truth. She misses you in ways she doesn't know how to admit. Not because she hasn't tried, but because something deep inside her refuses to be vulnerable. That something is called pride. And pride is loud. Louder than memory. Louder than desire. Louder than regret. There are nights she stares at her screen, wondering if you'll break the silence. There are moments she sees your name online, and her heart races like it used to. Not because she's moved on, but because she hasn't. Not really. She replays old moments like movie scenes, the quiet laughs, the late night talks, the way you used to look at her like she was the only one in the room. Those things haunt her now, not in bitterness, but in longing. And still, she says nothing. She wants to. Sometimes, she even types out the message. Long paragraphs explaining why she shut down, why she ran, how she still thinks about you, how she hasn't felt that safe since. But then fear creeps in. What if he doesn't respond? What if I look desperate? What if I lose all control? And so she deletes it. Again and again. Because silence, as painful as it is, feels safer than vulnerability. She convinces herself you don't care, that you've already moved on, that maybe you were never really hers to begin with. And yet, she still checks your profile, still watches your stories, still notices when you're active, because in her mind, you're still that man, the one who made her feel something real. But now, you're also the man who didn't chase, who didn't reach out, who didn't fold. And that unsettles her, because she expected you to break. She expected the silence to be too heavy for you. But it's not anymore. That's what makes the war inside her worse. Because now, she has to face the truth. She lost a man who became stronger without her. And the hardest part, she knows she did it to herself. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear, out of ego, out of the belief that silence would make her look powerful. Instead, it's only made her feel hollow. Number 5. Flipping the frame. This story is no longer about her, not about her silence, not about her distance, not even about the confusion or the regrets you once carried on your back like a weight. This is about you now, your healing, your rise, your peace. There was a time when her absence felt like abandonment, when her silence echoed louder than any scream, when every unopened message, every moment of being left unseen made you question your worth. You'd stare at your phone, refreshing the screen, hoping. A sign. Any sign. Just something that told you. She still thinks of you. And that pain, it was real. It burned deep. It didn't just bruise you, it hollowed you out. But look at you now. Because today, that silence doesn't break you anymore. It builds you. You've come to understand a hard truth. That the real battle wasn't about getting her back. It was always about getting yourself back. And you stopped chasing. Not out of spite. Not out of ego. But out of clarity. You no longer pace through the memories, wondering what went wrong, where the conversation died, or why she drifted. Instead, you've redirected that energy inward, into your body, into your mind, into your purpose. You took the ache and forged it into discipline. You took the questions and turned them into rituals of self-growth. You built a routine, brick by brick, that doesn't collapse when she disappears. And something changed. You no longer look outward for peace. You build it in silence. You no longer crave answers. You create progress. You no longer seek her validation. You found your own voice. Because here's the deepest truth. You never needed her. What you truly needed was the version of you that had boundaries, the man who stopped surviving on emotional breadcrumbs and started demanding a full life. A life not just free of chaos, but full of intention. This is the real transformation. It's not pretending to move on while checking her page at midnight. It's not playing games, posting to provoke a response. No, it's becoming a man who is so rooted in who he is that her silence no longer stings. It just passes. Meanwhile, she notices. Even if she doesn't admit it, she sees it. She sees the shift in your posture. She feels the calm in your silence. She scrolls through your updates, not out of judgment, but curiosity. Why isn't he chasing? Why does he seem better without me? And here's the irony. She thought she was removing herself from your life to maintain control. But your evolution, quiet, steady, relentless, flipped the entire script. She's no longer just watching a man she left. She's witnessing a man she can no longer reach. You are no longer the man waiting by the door. You're the man who walked through it. And not in anger, not with resentment, but with purpose. You're not rising to prove her wrong. You're rising to prove yourself right. That you don't need contact to have closure. That you don't need attention to have confidence. That peace doesn't come from someone returning. It comes from no longer needing them to. And the deeper she watches, the more it haunts her. She didn't just lose a man. She lost a man who turned pain into power, who used silence as a tool, not a trap. A man who didn't beg to be heard, but chose to be unshakable. And that, my friend, is how you flipped the frame. She expected you to fall apart, but you formed structure. She expected you to reach out, but you reached in. She expected you to wait, but you moved on. And now, she's the one looking back. You're the one walking forward. Each day, you choose to stay grounded, to stay focused. You're building something she no longer has access to. Not out of spite, but out of strength. A mind she no longer confuses. A heart she no longer manipulates. A spirit she can no longer shake. That's the real reversal. Not vengeance, Not a final word, but a peace so firm that it doesn't care who notices it. Let her wonder. Let her scroll. Let her sit in silence while you execute in calm. Because the man who no longer needs her attention is the one she can never forget. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a big speech, no dramatic ending, no final message that gave you closure. What happened was quieter than that. It was the moment you stopped looking at your phone, stopped checking her stories, stopped imagining the version of her that might come back one day and explain everything. That day you didn't even realize it. But something inside you started shifting. You didn't move on with noise. You moved on in silence. And that's what made it real. Healing doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in the moment you stop resisting what is. It shows up when you're sitting alone, not feeling sorry for yourself, but feeling steady, present, even in your pain. She didn't come back. No text arrived at 2 a.m. No apology ever showed up in your inbox. But you stopped needing one. You stopped needing her to validate the fact that you were worthy of being loved, right? Because you realized something bigger. Closure isn't given. It's chosen. There was a version of you that couldn't sleep, that replayed every conversation, that imagined 1,000 different ways it could have gone. You wanted a reason. You wanted an answer. But all you got was silence. And now that silence no longer tortures you. It teaches you. It humbles you. It sharpens you. You used to see her absence as rejection. Now you see it as redirection. Not towards someone else, but towards someone you forgot to be. You. The man who used to crave her attention has become the man who no longer needs it. Not out of arrogance, but out of awakening. You gave her too much of your mind, too much of your identity, but in that emptiness she left. You discovered your own depth. You stopped fighting the silence. You listened to it, and it started telling you the truth. Not about her, about yourself. You started asking better questions. Not, why did she leave? But why did I stay so long in confusion? Not, does she still think about me? But why was I so afraid to be alone with myself? And that's when the real healing began. Because true healing is never about the other person. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away for free. It's not about getting her back. It's about getting you back. That redemption. It didn't come wrapped in pride. It came with surrender. Not to her, but to truth. The truth that she doesn't owe you anything. And you don't owe her your life. You owe yourself your peace, your progress, your power. And slowly, you took it back. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels like presence. You no longer check if she's watching, because now you're the one watching your own life rise, day by day, brick by brick. No fanfare, no announcement, just the quiet sound of a man rebuilding from the inside out. And she feels it, even if she never says it, even if she never admits it out loud, even if she never sends that message she wrote and deleted. She feels your absence differently now, because it's not filled with longing, it's filled with peace. And peace is louder than heartbreak. She remembers how you made her feel, but more than that, She remembers how she felt about herself when you looked at her like she mattered. Now she looks in the mirror and doesn't feel that anymore. Not because you're not there, but because no one, since you, has made her feel seen like that. And that memory, it lingers, not in her inbox, but in her soul. But that's no longer your burden to carry. You're not here to haunt her. You're here to heal you. This was never about being cold. It was about being complete. And the more whole you become, the less you feel the need to prove anything to anyone, especially her. The man who once broke in silence now stands because of it. You're no longer driven by what she thinks. You're driven by your mission. You're no longer chasing love. You're chasing meaning. You don't want her attention. You want your peace. And in that pursuit, you found your redemption. Not the kind that demands recognition, but the kind that changes your spirit. Now your silence isn't just quiet. It's powerful. It's not passive. It's a statement. You don't speak to hurt. You don't act to be seen. You just are. And that is the deepest kind of presence. This wasn't revenge. This was renewal. She may have been the reason you fell, but you are the reason you rose. You didn't need an apology to grow. You didn't need a text to evolve. You needed time, stillness, reflection, and above all, courage. So now, when her silence continues, it no longer echoes in your mind. It confirms something you already know, that you outgrew what once broke you, that you've become untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because you no longer fold, that you've built a life so aligned, so purpose-driven, that her presence no longer defines your worth. This is redemption, the kind that walks quietly, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that simply moves forward, one silent, powerful step at a time. If you're still here, you're not just watching, you're searching, not for here, for yourself, for answers, for strength, for purpose. Most won't get this far, but you did. That means something. Support this channel not for me, but for the man who still checks his phone at midnight, still wonders why she vanished, is still questions if he mattered. Your like, your comment, your share. They're not just clicks. They're a signal, a message to every man who's been left in silence. Together, we rebuild what was broken. Together, we become unshakable. Subscribe, stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next video.